Sheriff Prasenko, I wanted to ask you this earlier, but you had stepped out for a minute during the meeting. We were doing the Older Americans Month presentation resolution. Could you please explain to us what you did to your arm?
Just a, oh, ouch. But just a little, don't need a walking stick, but just a little minor mishap at home, and we'll be recuperating.
Does that mean that older Americans should be a little more careful when they're up on ladders?
All Americans should be careful at all times.
Great. I appreciate that, Sheriff.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sheriff Prasenko. Thank you, Supervisor Modi. Item R9 is Skywalker Drive, Dillard Way petition to vacate. This is a public hearing, and we have a request by Mr. Owen to speak after the presentation by staff. Mr. Minturn, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Keough, members of the board. Pat Minturn, Public Works Director. Before you today is a petition from some property owners out in West Reading, unincorporated area just beyond West Reading, to abandon a portion of county-maintained roadway in their subdivision. Back in 1994, the Record Heights subdivision was created in West Reading. This is, if you look on this map, back here is Mary Lake, and over here is Lower Springs Road. The intent was for a road system that comes up and serves these parcels. And as the board may be aware, this is a prominent knoll, big overview of the entire area. There's a water tank actually near the top of that knoll. Very prominent peak in the area. And so these lots were subdivided, and the map was recorded in 1994, and it created this road system. And these, in keeping with the board's policy at that time, those roads were accepted into the county's maintained mileage. They were offered for dedication to the public and accepted, and the county has maintained them since. Also offered for dedication at that time was a trail system. The trail system connects over to Valparaiso Way and Lower Springs, and it's a broad network of trails. It's also an emergency fire escape route because this is a dead-end road, so there was a route here that takes you over back by indirect means over to Lower Springs and an alternate way out. And lastly, there were some utilities, not least of which was a water tank up there belonging to Shasta CSD, and they need access to their tank for maintenance purposes. This trail system has only become more popular and used in recent years, and folks have discovered that they can get from here to there, and it's a good weekend outing. It has also been discovered by folks who like to go up there and have a view around, and there's some drinking and so forth, and there's been some vandalism, particularly up here at the end of Skywalker, to the point where it's a concern of some local residents. They're happy to have the walkers. They want to keep the walkers. That's probably why they purchased some of these lots, so they themselves could walk. But the problems of particular and nighttime activities, but also during the day, folks who abuse the privilege and go into this neighborhood area. This is not a park. This is a county road in a neighborhood, and some activities up there have been disconcerting. So in a few years ago, the board abandoned this portion of the road, the end of Skywalker Drive, at the request of the property owners around it, but maintained access to the rest of this fork here. They have come back now, the residents, and requested abandonment of an additional portion of the county road. They have offered to create a turnaround here. They have secured additional right-of-way from the property owner here for a parking area, which we don't currently have, and for a turnaround. And the intent of the property owners is to install a gate. They have offered a reciprocal easement so that all of these residents can go across all of everybody else's property to get to their own residence. So they will continue to have access. They have offered for dedication as well a trail easement. So there's no question that walkers will still be welcomed. Walkers will still have a legal right to go through that area. Also, they have offered for dedication for emergency fire escape purposes and for utility purposes, access to the tank, maintenance of any utilities that are within the road right of way, water lines, and so forth. This matter has been vetted very thoroughly over this period, and it's been discussed for several years. Utility companies are all on board. Nobody's elected to oppose. City of Reading trail folks have weighed in. They support it. They'll continue to have access to their trail system. It'll continue to serve its purposes. The Bike and Trailways Council has endorsed this proposal. So it appears that the residents are all united in this proposal. They're prepared to assume maintenance responsibility for their roads. They're prepared to continue to welcome walkers, and the walkers and the bicyclists are apparently happy with this proposal. And so staff recommends approval at this time. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions of Mr. Minturn? Mr. Minturn, I have two questions. Will secondary fire access be compromised in any way by this action?
No, they will continue to have unfettered access through, and the other way as well.
Okay. The second question is relative to constructing the public parking and turnaround area on Dillard. When will this occur?
This will, if I may zoom into this spot right here, this will be completed before this offer of dedication or this abandonment is processed. Here's what's proposed. Folks will come up here, they will find a gate, but before they get showing in the same perspective as before, it was this way. So folks come up here, they'll have a turnaround, there's an additional easement here, there's also a parking area here. The applicants have agreed in writing to construct and dedicate these improvements before the abandonment is recorded. If they fail to do so, then the board's action will hang out there in limbo because it will not be recorded until these improvements are constructed and dedicated.
Thank you, Mr. Minturn. Further questions, Mr. Minturn? At this time, I will open the public hearing in item R9, Skywalker Drive and Dillard Way, petition to vacate. Thus far, we have one speaker, Mr. Brent Owen. Mr. Owen.
You also had a second request.
Good morning, Mr. Owen.
Good morning, sir. Members of the board. It's always difficult for me to know what to say because you don't know what problems are lurking in the backs of your mind that we could hopefully address. But I'm probably in a position to understand the trail users better than most in that part of the world, in that I live at the very end. I communicate with them every day. And I'm sure there are some trail users that are concerned that some rights are going to be lost, but they're not. I have not spoken to anyone. I've not been expressed any concern at all yet. The hard part is understanding part of what's going on. The litter, which is substantial and is a 7-day-a-week problem, my wife and I pick up every single day. And that's an annoyance. It's not very nice, but it's an annoyance. The recent graffiti and vandalism of the improvements we've installed for the trail is much more difficult for me to understand. And the thing that actually scares me is the fire safety. This weekend, and I'm not going to elaborate a lot of the problems that we have because it's well documented. The sheriffs are behind us and they understand what the problems are out there. But this weekend, we went up to do some trail maintenance work and discovered, I knew there was a major party up there because I went on until 3 o'clock in the morning on the hill behind my house. I went up there Saturday morning and I was shocked to find out that they had built a bonfire that was probably 6 or 8 feet across. And I don't know if you recall, but the wind was quite significant. And that kind of stuff is just incomprehensible to me, by how even kids drinking beer, I don't understand how that could happen, but it does. And we don't find fires there often, but probably once a month, all through the summer, it happens. And so that was our biggest concern, was the fire hazard. And the other thing that's disconcerting is if you see someone do something, you try to be polite, you don't want retribution, so you say, you know, it would be good if you wouldn't throw that stuff on the ground. And all too often, it's an in-your-face attitude, it's aggressiveness. And who do you think you are, mister? I'm going to do what I want. Wham! And it is not a very safe or secure feeling. And we were saying, well, wait a minute, our enjoyment of our home with their surroundings has been damaged and degraded. And so we went to people and said, what can we do about that? And we've dealt with the sheriff's office. They've been great, but the problems are so transient in nature, and there's so many different people, it's impossible to deal with it with police action. And so we came to the point of the conclusion that we reached was the only way to do that is to inconvenience access. So we can move the point of driving a car down the hill, so you'd have to walk up the hill and pack your beer and pack your firewood up the top of the hill. It's going to slow it down. We're going to inconvenience those people that are the perpetrators. We are also going to inconvenience some trail walkers, and that's a little bit troublesome because you're trying to balance all that between public need, necessity, and what's good and right for the neighborhood. And the balance we finally picked was going down the hill and turning it into, quote, a gated community, and make sure that we make it known that pedestrian users and bikers and walkers are accommodated. It's my best guess, and these numbers are fairly accurate, is that 60% of the people that use the trail walk up the hill already. The vast majority park down below where we created a little parking lot on a piece of private property. That's where most of the trail people park right now, and they walk up the hill, up the paved hill. And so we're not going to disrupt those people very much at all because they're still going to be walking up the hill about 300 feet further down the hill.
Mr. Owen, a 10-second summary, please.
We're looking for some help to allow us to help ourselves.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Dr. Lang Dayton. Good morning, Dr. Dayton.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you put your your timer up there so I can see it?
All right, that'd be good.
Thank you. Thank you for the entertainment and levity earlier. I appreciate that. I'm president of the Trails and Bikeways Council of Greater Reading, and Mr. Kehoe is very familiar with us. He was on Reading City Council when the city gave a trail easement that allowed for the West Side Trail to be created. It's been a great success, and litter really wasn't a problem early because the trail was blocked off at the bottom of the hill and people had to walk the hill. When the area became developed and trail and cars could access the top of the hill, the trash and litter really picked up. Any of you who've been to the top of the world will appreciate how pretty it is and why people would want to gather there. It's a mile-long ridge. There are very few cities in the country that have such a commanding view of such a beautiful area, accessible to so many people, so close to city center, and we want to keep it that way. If the road is abandoned as a public vehicle, the people will have to carry the beer up the hill on their backs instead of the back of their trucks, and we think that will largely eliminate the problem as well as the risk of wildfires caused by bottle rockets. Until now, the 4th of July has been a very anxiety-provoking time because people do shoot off rockets and fireworks and cause fires. Anyway, we support the abandonment. Now I'm going to end this talk, and I just wanted to reflect on something else, what Mr. BOS said about Meals on Wheels. In my other life, I'm a critical care physician, and just this year, we took care of a patient who would be in the obituary column had not a Meals on Wheels worker found a locked door, no answer, called help, and saved a life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dayton. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board this morning? At this time, I will close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of the board concerning disposition of item R9? You have supplemental?
No, sir.
Mr. Modi?
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to speak to Mr. Owen's comments and stuff. I understand exactly what you're saying. Where I live out off of Placer, when I was building my house, I was amazed. I'd go out there and find where they'd had bonfires in the middle. It was cul-de-sac, and they just built a 10-foot bonfire with a log that was probably 30 inches in diameter. I was surprised it got the darn thing up there, but it burned up the pavement, basically like that. And then later on, up above me, there's a cul-de-sac, which is up on a high point, and continuous problems with parties and the vandalism, as you mentioned, the fire concerns. I will tell you that those residents up there did eventually got a gate across the road, which kind of stopped it, but they still, for a little while, battled the people on foot going up there and partying. So, but after a little bit of vigilance and effort, they finally, I got the message to them, and they quit going there. So, I understand totally what you're trying to prevent. I applaud you for your efforts, all of you in your group, for being willing to step forward and making to put in the turnaround and put in parking spaces to grant access to those who want to park and walk up there. So I think that's just a great community effort on your parts, and I support this effort and will move approval.
Second.
We have a second, a motion and a second. Further discussion? Anything else, Mr. Minturn?
No, sir.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending. We appreciate your presence this morning. Mr. Minturn, thank you. We have a closed session announcement. Item R10, the Board of Supervisors will recess to a closed session to discuss the following items, estimated at an hour and a quarter. Conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, and conference with labor negotiator. At the conclusion of the closed session, reportable action, if any, will be reported in open session. We are now adjourned.